Welcome to the Power Exit Podcast. This show is dedicated to business owners who want to scale up, plan smarter, and prepare for the ultimate exit. We'll talk with M&A experts and owners who've been through the process to provide actionable advice so that you can sell your business on your terms and without regret. I'm John Marsh. Join me as we prepare to take control of your exit. Chris, thank you so much for joining the Power Exit Podcast. Do you know how much of an honor it is?
It should be an honor.
Yeah,
You should feel very, very honored. But no, this is
No, I'm thrilled to have you.
This is awesome, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, man. You've been an important part of my evolution as a business owner, and when I started the firm, so I wanted to have you here because the Power Exit Podcast is about helping business owners prepare for and take control of their exit so that they can exit their business without regrets. The reason you're here today is because you have a lot of experience in that space. So, founded the Center for Entrepreneurship at both UGA and KSU. You run the Center for Entrepreneurship here in Atlanta, and you're an entrepreneur as well. So tell us a little bit tell our listener about who Chris Hanks is, what you do, what kind of motivates you, and specifically would love to hear about the student impact that you have at the Center for Entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So basically, I was a serial entrepreneur who fell into teaching by guest speaking at Georgia State University, and I had the opportunity to start teaching classes there. Still entrepreneur by day, teacher by night, so really, really enjoying that. Then having the opportunity to found the entrepreneurship program at the University of Georgia, which really changed me because I fell in love with what entrepreneurship can do for people and the transformational impact it can have. And so I really, really loved that work. Then went to KSU and did the only entrepreneurship degree program, and now the Institute for Entrepreneurship, where we basically have 100 CEOs focused on growing themselves and their businesses, their people, and their legacy. We define legacy in two ways. One is, legacy is, like having other people beg you to pay you a premium for what you started at your kitchen table. Like, please let me continue what you started. That's legacy, right? That's exit. That's powerful. Like, it outlasts you. That's really powerful. That's a big part of what we do. We want to grow your people. We want to grow you, your company, your people, and your legacy. We also define legacy as far as students, right? What can we leave in people? Not necessarily for people. That's fine. And that's awesome part of legacy, and transferring all that value you built in your business into cash. That's a very important part of legacy. But now let me leave something in people. What about these students, that next generation of CEOs, and teaching them, like, look, here's what I regret about my exit. Here's what I regret about my growth. Here's what I regret about my ability as a leader. And then using, like if I wanted to cross a landmine, to get at, I got this analogy of, like, if I want to get from where I am to where I want to be, but there's this minefield in between those places, I want to step where other people stepped, right? And so, because I can't mess, especially when you're talking about exits, right? You have one shot. Most people statistically have one shot at this. You can't get it wrong,
right?
You got one. You can't mess that up. Like walking across a minefield, you got one chance to do it,
right?
And if you screw it up, it's drastic. You can't recover from it, and the exit is just too big of a deal. And I'll close with this. When you establish entrepreneurship centers, one of the things that entrepreneurship centers do is they take a stand on defining what entrepreneurship is, because there's a lot of debate about what it really is and what it really isn't. There is a belief by a lot of experts that say, you're not really a true entrepreneur unless you had a successful exit. Because you may have gotten to first base, maybe you can go second, maybe you were even standing out third. But you've never touched home plate. You've never circled all of the bases. And if you don't have a successful exit, you're not really an entrepreneur. That's a lot of people buy into that. When you think about, I guess Bernie Marcus just passed away.
Yeah.
He created over 3,000 millionaires who were original employees. Wow. When you think about that kind of exit, that kind of legacy, that kind of impact, right? And so helping others do the same, I think, is a big part of this calling of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. And you're obviously doing that every day. You're helping these CEOs, these students with growth. I was going to begin with, let's talk about some success stories, but your analogy of landmines brings me to, what have you seen folks do wrong? And I know your subset is a little different because you've got folks who are joining you monthly, being vulnerable, talking about their business challenges to improve and to grow and to hopefully reach home
Yeah.
plate,
Yeah.
like you've said here. But in what you do, I'm sure not every exit either you've had or you've seen has gone well. So, in my world, we see all kinds of things. But are there any that stand out, whether it's a specific story or just an overarching theme of folks who did not get an exit right and what they did and what they should have done when they looked in the mirror?
Yeah, that's a very vast topic, right? Because most don't get it right.
Yeah.
97% of entrepreneurs who've had exits have regrets. So there are so many reasons for that. Um, One of them, which seems a little bit obvious to maybe some listener or the listeners that we have, is that we're not preparing for an exit. Like when a business is the only investment you make where you don't consider exit afterwards, right? But that's the only investment we really make that we don't consider it, right? You wouldn't think about like a mutual fund, or I wouldn't think about any other kind of investment without considering how to
Right.
get my money out, without knowing that. You wouldn't build a building without fire escapes, right? Like it's so interesting that we don't do that with our business. Um, so the idea of preparing for it, I think good exit planning or exit strategy is really good business planning and business strategy.
I've heard you
It
say
should
that
be
before. It's true.
incorporated. It
Yeah.
should be part of what we do because a business should be the most significant aspect of your net worth. Should be about 60 to 80% of your net worth, but it's illiquid. So what does that mean? How do I value that? How do I increase value? How do I transfer that value to cash? It's so incredibly important, but yet business owners were so worried about doing business that we're not focused on building one. And exit planning is part of the building of one, you know? And so I just think like first and foremost, what I see them saying is they don't prepare for it until it's too late. Because like people want to exit. Why? What are some of the primary reasons people want to exit? Well, I'm burnt out. Well, I'm sick. I have a disability. You know, well, now it's a little late. Like if we would have been planning and thinking about that quarterly, it doesn't take a ton, it just takes like like good exit planning, I think is an intentional person's game, not necessarily a gifted person's game. And so the idea of keeping this top of mind, that exit planning, even if I'm not ready to exit, even if I'm still 30, that's fine. But exit, or like considering and preparing for exit is really being a really good CEO and a good business owner.
Yeah. No, I think you're 100% right. The Exit Planning Institute, same thing, says every 90 days you need to be asking yourself if you're growing or you're exiting. Again, that doesn't mean you're putting the business on the market in the next 90 days, but it means your mindset needs to be focused towards preparing for an eventual sale. I see a lot of folks who get stuck in the daily operations of their business and they don't have the opportunity to step back and say, hey, what makes businesses like mine valuable? What can I do in my business to make it more appealing to either a strategic or a private equity? There's numerous things, customer concentration, revenue models, things that really impact the business that take time to
Yeah, it
change.
really does.
It's not something you can do, 6 months before you say, hey, I'm done. And then you talked about the 5 Ds, the things that you can't control, the death, disability, divorce, disagreements with partners. Those things, I jokingly say, although it's true, time is your friend in this process until it's not. And we see a lot of folks just neglect that, hey, I've built something that's paying me a great salary. I have wonderful employees who the business is providing for, and they take that exit for granted.
Yeah,
And usually it's
absolutely.
too late. Um, well, we get phone calls from folks all the time and say, hey, I'd like to sell in 6 months. What they don't realize is that a business transition takes 9 to 12 months from hiring an M&A advisor to selling the business. And then any buyer is going to want a transition period. The more runway you can provide them, the more security the buyer has that you're not running away from something. So we say 2 years to actually do the process. And that's not the preparation that, your group, well, I know it's not focused only on exits, but there are things that you can do like you said, well in advance. So kudos to you for helping your CEOs do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just want to echo that. It's the, me, like, if I am going to be good at my role and my job, and for me to ignore this is I'm not being a good steward, and I'm not being a good business owner. It is too fundamental. It is too important, and there's too much that hangs in the balance. And so so I think if we could just do one thing and just shift people's mindset on that, because the problem with exit I found too is I don't like the term because it implies, well, I'm not ready to leave. It's like,
Yeah.
that's not the point. You're going to run a better business if you treat it like an asset. If you say, okay, well, let me think about my diversification of customers. Let me think about my management team depth and all of those value drivers that impact it. Right. And so I become a better business. And the irony of exit planning, I think, is the better I get at it, the less likely I want to exit. It's like, okay, what happens? Well, all of a sudden I have a disability. Well, I don't have to sell it because the business isn't owner dependent. If the value of your business walks out of the door with you, then,
That's it. Yeah.
it's not much of an asset versus, okay, I'm disabled. We had a member who was, his wife, it was actually not him, but his wife, got severely sick and he took about a year off from his business and his business did just fine. Why? Because he was focused on exit planning,
Yeah.
right? Not because he was ready to exit.
Yeah, and I do want to reframe it a little bit. It's not about exit planning. It's about building a business that works for you. We see a lot of entrepreneurs who have their identities tied up in these businesses and then are unable to extract themselves. And then they find themselves, you and I have talked about this over a cigar, folks sitting at home watching TV once they retire. They don't have an identity, they don't have. So I guess where I'm going with this is if you build the business today to be an asset, not just exit planning, but running your business in a way that it works for you rather than you working for it. Um, it makes it a whole lot easier to sell and ultimately step away from. You've talked a lot about the emotional aspects of being tied to your business. What have you seen? How do you advise those folks who, maybe close to retirement age and are scared about what life 2.0 looks like? They don't have an identity.
I think that is such an important topic that's not talked about near enough. And it's a hard thing to talk about. What you do and what your firm does is you help people have exits that they couldn't possibly think that has a much more positive outcome than they ever imagined possible. Um, and that's awesome. And we get attracted like, wow, if I get this kind of multiple, if I get this kind of, money, I'll never have to worry about money again in my life. That's amazing. What happens next? And it's a hard thing to talk about. It's like, oh, poor you. Your bank account is full and you've got problems. But you're right. My identity, entrepreneurship is such a personal endeavor. My DNA is wrapped all into my business. And what we create, we become emotionally attached to. And so now I'm giving somebody else my baby. I used to, take pride in developing my people and showing up there all the day, going in the warehouse with the guys. And now all of a sudden I'm irrelevant. That is really hard, right? You want to be relevant. You want to be so many of us want to be the guy who gets the phone call. Hey, we got a problem. Great. Let me solve that problem, right? Hey, we got this issue. We got this opportunity. Great. And to not be that guy anymore, it's really hard, right? And not be the leader, the CEO, the founder. It is a really humbling experience to not be relevant anymore.
Yeah.
And what do I do now? And there's a guy that I know that had a very, very successful exit. And I went to go meet him at his country club. And
What kind of business without naming the name? Service
Software.
business, software
It was a
business.
software
Okay.
business. And he said to me, which I never forget that, is more like less of what he said and the way he said it. He said, Chris, there's only so much golf and tennis you can play every day. Or you get to play golf and tennis all day. It's like, yeah, but he lost his purpose, right? It's to take away somebody's purpose is a really horrible thing. After an exit, 17 months. 17 months. Now, I know that they're skewing because a lot of people exit older, but 17 months is the average lifespan after exit.
Wow.
And I think and I don't know, but I think part of it is because I lost my purpose, my reason for getting up every day,
Wow.
my reason for being, right? You're taking that away. I spent a lifetime mastering the craft of scaling a business. And now I'm going to Publix and selecting, going to get produce. That's the big part of my day. Like that is a real thing. Um, I am in conversation with people about that. I totally get that. Right. And so I think something to evaluate is, hey, what would I love to do if I didn't have that? If I wasn't doing this every day, if I wasn't in the trenches every day of this business, what's something that I might want to do? Would I want to teach a class? Would I want to do something? Would I want to travel? But having a purpose and having a vision of the future that gets you excited is a really important thing.
Yeah, and it's so neglected. We talk about the power exit, exiting your business on your terms without regret. And there are many, aspects of that, financial, family, but the emotional attachment, the purpose that you're hinting on is often overlooked. It takes a lot of these business owners checking their ego at the door, which we have a problem doing when
Oh,
you're
big
going
time.
in as a type
Yeah.
A personality, growing a business to say, hey, what am I going to do afterwards? I
Yeah.
mean, you said Publix. If it's Costco every day, maybe that's a different story. I love Costco, but you're right. I mean, getting
Yeah.
up every day and not having a purpose is one of the biggest challenges that make an exit turn bad. Something
Totally.
that should be celebrated, something
Yeah.
that should be a great milestone, is often not, because folks don't have something else.
Absolutely. And I am so attached, like you were mentioning how we're so emotionally attached to our business. I saw a deal go sideways because the owner wanted the website to reveal that he was the founder.
No.
And during the exit, they say, well, we don't know if we're comfortable doing that because, it's a new day and a new chapter. And that became a sticking point. But I kind of understand. He's like, but I want people to know I founded the business. It's like, oh, why does it matter? Well, because it matters to me, and I get that. Like he wanted the website to have a picture of him and the story of how he created the business. They knew buyers didn't look back for reasons I totally understand. And so that's a sticking point, right? My emotional attachment, I want people to know. It is incredibly humbling for me to walk around University of Georgia's campus and see all the entrepreneurship program stuff and go, yeah, nobody cares. I do that, right? So nobody cares really. Like, like we've got it's a very humbling thing to learn. Or one of the phrases I use sometimes is, are you here to build a statue or are you here to dig wells?
Yeah, there you go.
Because wells, we don't care who dug it. We're just getting the benefiting. Everybody benefits for generations because of the well was dug. Statues is about one. Wells are about community, right? And so which one do you really want to be? And then that's humbling. I was like, look, yeah, I know nobody's going to remember my name 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 100 years from now that I started this business. But look at the benefit and look at the impact that made on the community, on the people, all those car payments that I made because of me.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
It is. And it's, just there might not be a statue of you at UGA next to Herschel Walker and Vince Dooley, but there are multiple members in our groups who started with you as a student at UGA or KSU and are now running successful companies. So you're digging some wells, which is an amazing thing. All right. So oftentimes we hear, when is the ideal time to exit our business? And no one knows the answer to that. Only the person selling, the owner of the business, can know when they're ready. But being prepared and being ready to exit, on these 90-day sprints, as the Exit Planning Institute calls it, can prepare you to be ready to go when it's time. I've seen the most success with folks who are, not ready to completely hang it up, but are preparing in advance and have built businesses that are appealing to private equity. These folks oftentimes take substantial chips off the table and roll equity with a private equity firm for that proverbial second bite. Those can go very, very well. There are also horror stories. Do you have any experience with folks in your groups or folks that you've mentored who have taken that ride with private equity or sold and kept, a minority partner involved, or excuse me, stayed on as a minority partner. Have you seen any of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've even seen a third bite, which is weird, right? You get the
Oh,
second bite
wow.
and you get the third bite. Like a third bite, that's amazing
That
to
is
me.
pretty
So
amazing.
absolutely. And that could be a powerful thing. We're like, okay, let me sell this to a private equity firm. And then that private equity firm, I have a stake in that. And then when they go and they have a liquidation event, I can benefit from that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and we do a lot of those transactions. They're fun to watch. They're fun to do because there's so much energy between the buyer and the seller. And I'm talking about the operators, not the private equity firm who I'm negotiating with, but the operators of that business. Talking about the synergies, where they're going next, what businesses they're going to acquire. Um, and it takes the right mindset for that, because you've built a business that's been around and you haven't had a boss. Now you're coming in and you're joining a big company, or maybe you're the platform, but ultimately you're going to have a boss. You're going to have a board. You're going to have all these people to report to. So it takes the right mindset. But man, we've seen a couple of those go really well.
Yeah, they can go really, really well, right? Because if you think about the sophistication of that, like, because a lot of us can't, like there's a difference between a founder led company and a professional managed one.
Yeah.
And we have to be honest about that as well, right? Okay, it's a different type of leadership style. It's a different type of CEO role. And so, hey, okay, maybe I took this business to 30 million. Could I take it to 300 million? And maybe I could, but it's going to take me a lot longer versus there's synergy here, or they've got access that I don't have. They have, they have talent density that I don't have, whatever it is. And I can tap into that. Now, yes, I'll have to play more of a limited role. But maybe that's part of the problem too, because there's that phrase, the bottlenecks are always at the top. And one of the reasons you're not growing is because all growth goes through you, versus now I'm part of a much larger platform. And now I can play a role where I'm uniquely gifted and not have to worry about things like HR or selecting a CRM or ERP or whatever those things are. You're free to do what you do best.
Yeah. And it's amazing how quickly some of these private equity groups can execute on a growth on a growth by acquisition strategy. They have deal teams, they're negotiating LOIs, they're integrating these things quickly. And that's a skill, right? That is it's not something that anybody off the street can do. And that is putting the jet fuel into the engine to take hopefully the thing to the next
Absolutely.
level. Now, I want to pause, and not everything is perfect when these deals happen. We've had some that we've seen that have not gone as well. And some of those are because of macroeconomic conditions. Maybe the market changed. Uh, but some of it is also about fit. And the owners of our clients maybe didn't have the right fit, and they got sw- uh, they got they got sold, or they chose the higher financial.
Absolutely.
There's
Yeah.
it's not always the most money.
Yeah.
It's not somebody who's going to pay you the most money is not always the best partner. So any experience in those type of transactions where you've seen things not go well
Oh, for
post
sure.
closing?
Oh, absolutely. Right. You know, what's hard to assess is culture, right? A good culture should be reflected in your EBITDA, but all of a sudden we're merging now two cultures.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing. There's an intangible there, right? There's so many varieties, right? There might be that one player that doesn't look like the rock star employee, but they make the other employees better, right? And there's those weird nuances that are kind of like, okay, and now I'm merging. Now I'm looking for ways to decrease expenses and increase revenue. And so therefore I'm going to eliminate redundancies. Well, all of a sudden I really screwed up what possibly that special sauce that made this place great. And so I've seen that where like, gosh, you know what? Things just don't feel the same. Things aren't like they used to be. And maybe then the rock stars start looking elsewhere, because rock stars can always be hired elsewhere. And so you see how this thing that once looked good on paper isn't so good a year later, right? And it's just a very natural kind of thing. It's not necessarily intentional. Nobody's necessarily evil. I know private equity sometimes by some entrepreneurs have a negative reputation. It's like, well, all they care about is the bottom line and those kinds of things. I've seen a lot of deals go sour. It's not necessarily because they're evil on any side. It's just that those kinds of intangibles happen. Those kinds of changes happen, right? And so what do we do to protect the company from that? How do we set up some guardrails? How do we protect employees through employee agreements or whatever? What can we do? If
Yeah.
we had to really think about what makes us special, what is it? And let's write that down. Let's document that. The level of documentation is directly like my ability to document has a direct correlation to Roots value, right? Because I'm taking these intangibles and say, hey, we've kind of documented our culture and our rituals and our behaviors that make us us. And here you go, right? We have a process for onboarding customers. Here's our process. And then versus again, just assuming that things will run as is. And then that person in customer service left. And now we got somebody else and they're doing it their way.
Yeah.
And so to the extent that we can document, to the extent that we can, put in maybe an employee agreement when necessary, if necessary, we can maybe put up some guardrails to mitigate that risk.
Yeah. No, and that's a great point. I counsel clients to be comfortable with the amount of money that they're taking off the table, the chips that they're bringing home in that first bite. Now, we're going to do everything we can to review this buyer, make sure they're a good fit. Obviously, financial capacity, historical performance all plays into that. But this process is often like getting married before you have a chance to date, because if you're running a competitive process, you've got multiple suitors for your business. You're going to have a management meeting, maybe an on-site after indications of interest. Then you're going to select and negotiate an LOI, call that a week or two. And then you've got a 90 to 120 day diligence period. That is not a lot of time. And you are in the trenches when you're running this process by design, right? Because it is meant to be efficient. So, one of the things that I ask clients to do is let's go meet previous business owners who've done a deal with this private equity firm. How did it go? And we're sure going to take their references. They're going to provide us with the best ones, but we're going to get on their webpage and say, no, we want to talk to this person. We want to talk to this person. And you're trying to assess fit there, right? We're trying to assess how it's going to be working with this private equity firm. Are they going to return an investment or have a return on the investment of the rolled equity? All of those are critical factors in selecting the right partner, including making sure that you're comfortable with the cash that comes to you at closing. What advice would you give to a CEO in your peer groups they've got 5 or 6 great offers from private equity? How could they evaluate those to increase the likelihood that post-closing integration period and working relationship is going to be smooth?
Well, what I was going to say probably isn't as good as what you just said, because I would have thought about not only taking those names, but going to see others and that kind of thing. I
Yeah.
think that's a great thing to do that I wouldn't have thought about. And I think that's another reason why you need a professional in this, right? This is a little bit of a side, then I'll get back to the question. Um, I, I know entrepreneurs like to be do-it-yourselfers. I know that for me, I'm tempted to, what, I'll do my own legal agreement because I could just chat GPT that. Why do I need to hire an attorney? I get that. I get that line of thought. This is too important. And you need somebody professional who's in the trenches every day, knows how to get deals done. I know a lot of entrepreneurs say, well, I want somebody who understands my industry. No, you need somebody who knows how to get the freaking deal done, how to structure deals, how to do price and how to maximize price, how to structure terms. It's so incredibly complex and it is tough. So we need professionals who can guide us. So anyway, I just wanted to say that because I wouldn't have thought about that, right? I thought, oh, well, I know how to exit. I've done it before. And I'll think about that. I wouldn't have thought about what you just said, right?
Well, in your defense, I didn't give you that question in advance, and I kind of answered it for you. So you're doing a great job.
What else could be done, I guess, to minimize that? We are going to get tempted by who pays us the most. So what's the most attractive? versus, okay, uh, I am going to spend as much time developing relationships as possible. I am going to try my best to meet, to re-meet, to have a conversation so that there's a comfort level. I want to do my best to really understand the company, understand the people there. I think that will allow me to make a wiser decision. If I've got 5 offers, what's the best one? I have seen, I'm impressed that the last few examples I can think of, it wasn't about who paid me the most. It's like you said, who do I feel is a better fit? Who kind of gets us more? Who do I think is going to really lean into my people or lean into my process, whatever the things that are most important to that person.
Yeah.
And I find that really, really impressive. It's not about it's not the highest bidder. It's what's best for my goals and my legacy and what's important to me.
Yeah. I think that's important. Hit the nail on the head. The other thing that I counsel my clients is, if things start appearing to be bad during the process and the spidey senses are tingling, don't be afraid to walk away. If you've hired an advisor who runs a competitive process, hopefully there are other suitors involved. And just because don't get me wrong, you should never sign an LOI if you don't plan on completing the deal. But if true colors come out during that process, then maybe it's time to rethink, have we selected the right partner? Leverage changes dramatically in a deal from when you sign that letter of intent. You've got control prior to that. But once you sign that letter of intent and enter into exclusivity, leverage shifts. They're in control.
Yeah.
So,
And a lot of times that's the highest valuation you're going to get.
yeah.
Right. Once that's the lowest sign, that's the highest because they're going to find they have MBA, Ivy League people who are going to beat that down to the extent that they can. And again, having an advocate, because I've also seen this where I'm so emotionally attached to my business and now I'm negotiating with a 28-year-old MBA. Are you freaking kidding me? And that person's calling my baby ugly. You called my baby ugly? How dare you? My baby may be ugly. I'm the only one who gets to say that. So you don't get to say that. It's somebody like you you can be the advocate and the, you could be my guy. So I can vent to you. It's like, how dare this happen? And you can remove the emotion and guide us through because it's going to get highly, highly emotional.
Yeah. Well, and I think we said it here, 50% of deals fall through post LOI. What I see when folks take an unrepresented deal where they don't have the right attorney, they don't have the right M&A advisor, is they spend all this time responding to the hundreds of data requests. And their business has done this during the diligence process. A decline in revenue and EBITDA during the trailing 12-month period or through due diligence is not what anybody wants to see.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I had always had the understanding that the last year of revenue gets the most scrutiny. Meaning, I'll take maybe the last 3 years of financials, the last 5 years of financials, but it's that last year or that gets the most scrutiny.
That's great.
So anything I can do to tighten that up as much. So if I'm declining a little bit during those, it's harder for me to look back 2 years, right? So I've got 1 foot out where I'm spending so much time answering this due diligence, which is going to be brutal. It's not fun. And to have somebody guide me through that or somebody relieve me from that. And somebody's been there, done that. Like, I know they're requesting this. Here's how we'll respond. Because sometimes we don't even know how to respond to that.
Well, and and there are times where the response is not appropriate, especially at that time in the process.
Yeah.
So if 2 days post LOI, signing the LOI, they're asking for meetings with your employees or key customers, that's a hard stop.
Yeah.
It's a no.
I would agree.
It's an absolute no. There's a way to do that at the right time. And that's where things can really go south. When you don't know as a business owner what's appropriate.
Yeah.
And if they're in front of your customers, in front of your employees, and there's the message of new owner.
Oh yeah.
And that deal falls apart, there's a lot of egg on the face.
Absolutely.
And scared employees.
Yeah.
Scared customers.
And I also believe that it's not an information providing exercise. It's a storytelling exercise.
Yes.
Because a valuation is a perception of value in the future, right? Here's what I think the value is. Here's my opinion of value based upon what's known and knowable at the time. And then I'm projecting out into the future, right? So the idea that it's a perception. And I have to know that, like, okay, I'm going to tell the story of the numbers. It's not just providing numbers. It's not just providing data. It's the story of the data, because I have to impact that perception. Because you and I can look at the same asset and we have, like, it's not about, like, a lot of times beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? You see something there. It's like, wow, I can take this company and I could really, really advance it. And I look at the same company going, yeah, I don't see that much opportunity in it. So it's going to be worth less to me than it is to you. And we have to change that narrative and have an advocate who can change that narrative that, no, you're not seeing this thing is freaking huge, So yeah, because all evaluation, like, if I was going to summarize what evaluation is, at its basic fundamentals, it's a very simple formula. I know valuation people like me make it more complex, the single period income capitalization methods and things like that. But it's really just the amount of money I'll get over in the future divided by the risk of me getting it. So how much money will I get over time? Well, that's an opinion. We don't know. Nobody's crystal balling here. So it's going to be a variety of factors, tons of factors that are impossible for any of us to know. What's the industry going to do over the next 5 years? What's the economy going to do over the next 5 years? What kind of customers? How's that going to change? I mean, it's a lot of assumptions. So I am going to tell a story that really moves the assumptions a little bit more in my favor.
Oh.
Because if the numerator's higher and the risk stays the same, then the value goes up. Or if the money is the same, the numerator higher, but risk goes down. Like, well, I see risk, and he's like, no. You know what? Risk is not as high as you think. I have management team that will be in place. The value is not walking out the door when I walk out. We do have, a well-diversified customer base. It's not concentrated like you think it is. And here's why. And all of those things that impact value. It is a storytelling exercise.
Yeah, for sure.
Two of the biggest ones that I've seen in research is size and onlys, meaning we are the largest. Now, you may just be the largest auto parts dealer in Atlanta or in DeKalb County,
right,
or whatever, but size matters, right? When you say the largest, there's something different about that. We are the largest. We're the largest in this sector, in this niche, with this group of customers. But there's a way to build a story around size that can really influence the perception of value. And then also being the only. We're the only blank that does only blank. And how would you fill in those blanks? You're the only. Because when I buy you, right, you're a commodity. Your commodities are interchangeable based on price. Like, well, I can buy this company for this price, or I can buy the other company for that price. But when it's an only,
I love that.
It's different. And I want to perceive as that we're the only ones. And I know that there's other companies that you may be able to purchase, but we are the only blank that does only blank, and building a narrative around that and having the information support that. So I'm certainly not advocating or just to be overly clear that anything is false,
Absolutely.
but it is a perception. And I need you to perceive my company has real value and that your life is better because you just met me.
I love it. So we talk about the story, and again, always truthful. We are not going to lie. We're not going to hide from the hair on a deal, because there's no perfect business out there. And like you said, these 28-year-old Harvard MBAs are paid to find those issues. So we're not going to lie. But I also didn't tell my wife on our first date that I needed a CPAP and lactose intolerant, right? I mean, there's a time and a place. But we talk about three parts to the story. The story of, what problem did you solve, or what problem did you see in the market, and how did you build this company to address it? Where are you today? How did you get here, and what do you do today? And I like the only and the why. But the third part, and is equally important, is where is the company going? Even though Chris Hanks or the CEO isn't going to be there long term, there still has to be the proverbial gas in the tank. There needs to be a long runway left for this business, or folks aren't going to buy it. And you, as the business owner, the founder, are the best suited to articulate where this business can go.
Absolutely. If I can articulate a vision of the future that puts goosebumps on their arm, goosebumps always sell. Like, here's where this business is going. And I need that to be tangible. I need that to be concrete, not like, well, this company will be more successful down the road. Like, no, what does success mean? Paint me a picture. and make it as graphic as possible, because then I don't get emotionally attached to vague words. It has to be specific. My subconscious can't remember words. It only sees images. Paint me a picture
Yeah.
of what that looks like and what their life will be like in 2 years when they own this business. That is a very different thing than here's my financial statements.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
So it's
That's
a
right.
story.
Yeah.
It's getting them emotionally vested in this business and getting them excited, right? Like that is a real powerful part of this whole process as far as maximizing my value.
That's right. And it's consistent messaging, right? I mean, we don't want our clients to speak with every buyer. That's not why they hire us, right? We need to be developing compelling marketing materials that talks about the story, the only, the why, or the size of the why, the one. And that's an important part of this. But then also training or coaching that business owner on how does a management call go? Or, how do you articulate this story?
Yeah. Or part of the position could be, I don't know, correct me on this, because I think this is kind of interesting strategy that I've advised, and maybe this is bad advice because I'm not a professional advisor like you, but like, okay, there's a management call. You don't go on it. Because one of the best things to say, I don't know the answer to that, but my GM does.
Yeah, there you go.
Even if I know the answer.
That's right.
I'm not so sure about that, but call my GM. That's awesome, right? Again, the value's not walking out with the door. It's reinforcing that.
Yeah.
And just to add on with that, Columbia University did a study, which I thought was interesting, that tied hubris to higher premiums. Meaning, like, what I want is that private equity, that MBA, that Ivy Leaguer, to be the most intelligent person in the room. And what I'm tempted to do is like, all right, son, let me tell you how things really are. And you don't know the industry, and you guys don't know as much as you think you do. I think the reverse positioning, like, hey, let them be the smartest guy in your room. Hey, we did $20 million and we don't know a whole lot, but with your expertise, gosh, this could go to $200 million. And so the idea of being humble and not necessarily trying to prove how intelligent you are and how much industry knowledge, because then are you creating a perception that, okay, if this guy leaves, versus, hey, I am just the guy who, man, I just kind of showed up every day and built a $20 million business. And gosh, with your guys' intelligence and your sophistication and your abilities, boy, this could go. So
that's hard for some clients.
Big time.
It's check your ego at the door.
It's really, really hard with that kind of positioning that you are not the smartest guy in the room. I want you to be the dumbest guy in that room.
Yeah. Well,
so that's a little hard for some.
I might need to find a way to message that a little bit better, but no, I get it. I mean, we say check your ego at the door. We cannot go in to a management meeting and just be puffing our chest talking about how great we are.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, it's amazing you built this wonderful business, but if you're looking to get to the beach or get to the mountains or get to the golf course, that buyer doesn't want to let you do that until they're fully integrated in that business. So
and as far as psychology of the deal, I also believe in those studies where if I say I'm great at 3 things, you're less likely to believe me. But if I say, hey, I really suck with this one thing, but I'm really good at 2 things, you're more like, my authenticity and my credibility goes up. So, hey, what is the thing that this business sucks at? Let's just be let's hammer it. Because they'll get to the idea and say, you know what, you guys don't suck as much as you think about that. Yeah, we just aren't really good at, we're not necessarily good at inventory management. Like, we are terrible at it. It's like, oh, no, your shredders are not bad. No, let that go. But I want to say, here, I'm really bad here, but we're really great there. And then my credibility goes up. So intentionally choosing the things to hammer in my own baby, like I said, my baby's beautiful and you guys just don't understand. Because it's a hard thing. Somebody walking your business and telling you everything that's wrong with it. You want to punch somebody.
It's like being married.
It's like you coming into my house and calling my wife fat. You can't do that, right?
No.
I'm the only one who do that. That's a horrible example. And my wife
We're
is
gonna
not
edit that
fat.
one.
I know that's a terrible example. My wife
shouldn't have brought the wife.
She is not fat. But I was just thinking, like that's just a really offensive thing to say in somebody's house. Are you kidding me? You called my baby ugly, my child, the thing that I created. Screw you.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, it's a lot harder to structure a deal that is ideal for me.
And that is one of the biggest roles of M&A advisors, is to deflect that, because we have some pretty tough conversations behind the scenes. And, we're not going to lie to our clients. We're not going to hide it from our clients, but sometimes 24 hours makes a big difference
Yeah.
in delivering bad news or delivering news that is not ideal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And every deal dies 9 times. Well, I don't know where we come up with 9, maybe because it's like a cat, but they die multiple times, right? And we resurrect those deals. Attorneys sometimes resurrect those deals. All the more oftentimes than not, they are the ones who are killing them one of the 9 times. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
anyway.
but that is true. Like it is a very, very difficult thing to navigate through. The complexity, the emotion, what's at stake, right? You spent a lifetime creating these values. You sacrificed your health. You sacrificed your relationships. You weren't at your child's, dance recital or whatever. You sacrificed all of that. And now it's time to get a return on that.
Yeah. And
And
don't
for
leave anything
me
on the table.
to just not plan for that, not be intentional about that, just think about that. You sacrificed way too much not to maximize what you get at the exit,
No.
right? Or to have a power exit. You've sacrificed way too much and there's too much at stake. So we have to get the best possible team in place as possible. Because this is, again, you've gotten, like I got the Eminem song going in my head, you got one shot or one opportunity.
Yeah.
Are you going to capture it?
Yeah.
So,
No,
you
please
have to
keep
do it.
going,
Yeah.
Chris.
Oh, I'll keep going. I'll just take the mic and then all of a sudden, can we edit the music in there?
Yeah,
And then
there you
just-
go.
Yeah.
No, it's exactly right. We've seen it go badly for a lot of people. The numbers are not in your favor. And you got to take control of it, whether that's through, an M&A advisor, a business broker, but someone who's knowledgeable about how a transaction works. And I think that's part of what your group does is it tells owners, your members,
We have
how to
owners who
prepare.
commiserate, and then you have me facilitating, but it's different for somebody who's living, eating, and breathing deals every day. Like I know what a herd-out is. I know what certain aspects of deal structure is, but I don't live that every day, so I don't know what I don't know. And even one tax election could save me a ton of money, right? Like I just don't know enough. It is too complex. And I'm the nerdiest guy in entrepreneurship that you're going to find. And it's just too complex for me. I need somebody who's because I will rely on the deals that I was a part of or the deals that I've had personally. But those examples, maybe there's something new that I don't see. If I'm not living it every day, it is hard for me. Like I wouldn't want to gamble with that. I wouldn't want to take the chance that I'm right or that I see all the things that I should be seeing.
Right. Yeah. So, Chris, I want to thank you for being the first guest on the Power Exit podcast. It's a pleasure having you. As I've said, I've benefited from being a part of the Center for Entrepreneurship. So if there's a business owner out there who's looking for a group like yours, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
So the website is institute4entr.com. So institute and then FOR and then ENTR for entrepreneurship.com, which I know is awkward. We are a group of CEOs who are seriously committed to growth, not just people interested in growth, but people who are serious about this kind of thing, who want to grow themselves. They want to grow their companies. They want to grow their people. And they want to grow their legacy. It is a very tough thing. We spend, each of our sessions is a 6-hour live session. I mean, that's a lot of time to spend together each month, but it's that important, right? So there's too much at stake if we don't. And so we also, and again, and part of our part of getting these 100 together is invest in 100 students. So we want to do that as well and do that well to create those future CEOs and have that future impact.
Awesome. Well, Professor, thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Yeah.